Listen, I'd been around this galaxy for 300 cycles, and I thought I'd seen every type of species there was. The peaceful ones who roll over at the first sign of trouble. The aggressive ones who bark loud but fold when you show them real firepower. The clever ones who think they can outsmart superior technology with fancy tactics. But humans? Oh, humans were supposed to be different, special even. At least that's what our intelligence reports claimed. My name is Vorth-Nine-Kalar, Senior Fleet Commander of the Hegemony Expeditionary Force, and I was about to learn the most expensive lesson of my very long life. You see, we'd been watching these humans for about 50 of their years. Standard operating procedure, really. Find a developing species, catalogue their strengths and weaknesses, then either absorb them into the hegemony as tributary slaves or, well, let's just say the alternative wasn't pleasant. The initial reports were laughable. These creatures had only just figured out how to leave their home system in any meaningful way. They had maybe 30 inhabited worlds, if you could call those pathetic colonies inhabited. Their technology was primitive by our standards, their military scattered across dozens of petty nation-states that couldn't agree on what to have for breakfast, let alone how to defend themselves. But here's the thing about humans that our scouts kept mentioning, the detail that made our war council pause and actually debate for a whole hour instead of just ordering immediate subjugation. These humans had this disturbing tendency to do the impossible when cornered. Not clever impossible, mind you, stupid impossible. The kind of impossible that made seasoned military analysts throw their tentacles up in frustration and declare the whole species unpredictably irrational. Take their Battle of Thermopylae, for instance. 300 warriors held off an army of hundreds of thousands. Tactically brilliant, sure, but also completely suicidal. Any reasonable species would have surrendered and lived to fight another day. Not humans. They fought until the last one died, just to buy their people a few more hours. Or their Second World War. They fought each other with such ferocity that they literally split atoms to end it. Then, instead of conquering the galaxy with this newfound power, they spent the next 50 years pointing these weapons at each other while simultaneously reaching for the stars. Baffling. The War Council finally decided on the standard approach. Show overwhelming force, demand surrender, absorb their useful population, strip their worlds of resources. Clean, efficient, proven effective on over 2,000 species. What could go wrong? I was given command of Battle Fleet Omega-7. 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, 192 frigates, and support vessels numbering in the thousands. The kind of force that had brought entire galactic sectors to their knees. Surely more than enough to handle one tiny species that hadn't even figured out faster-than-light communication. We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their home system on what they called a Tuesday morning. Their primitive sensors detected us immediately, of course. We wanted them to. Fear is an excellent negotiating tool. Within 6 hours, every human military vessel in the system was scrambling toward us. I watched their approach on the tactical display and couldn't help but laugh. 47 ships, total. Their largest vessel was roughly the size of one of our frigates, and from what our scanners could determine, it was held together with what appeared to be metal plates welded over previous damage. Their famous Ingenuity, I supposed. The humans established a communication link, and I found myself face to face with Admiral Marcus Kane, Supreme Commander of something they grandly called the Terran Defense Force. He was exactly what I'd expected from the species profile, being hair, lined face showing the stress of command, and those unsettling blue eyes that seemed to look right through the holographic display. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force," he said, his voice steady despite facing odds of roughly 50 to 1. "You are in violation of Terran space. State your intentions." Oh, the arrogance. I decided to have some fun with this. "Admiral Kane," I replied, making sure my translator conveyed the proper tone of condescension. "I am Senior Fleet Commander Vorth-Nine-Kalar of the Galactic Hegemony." Your species has been selected for integration into our glorious empire. You have 72 of your hours to evacuate all military personnel from your outer colonies and prepare for peaceful transition of governmental authority. The human was quiet for a long moment, those blue eyes never leaving mine. When he finally spoke, there was something in his voice that should have warned me. A note of amusement? 72 hours, he repeated slowly. That's generous of you, Commander. Most folks don't give us nearly that much time. Your compliance is not optional, I continued, following standard protocol. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate the consequences. Your ships are impressive for their primitive construction, but surely you realize you cannot stand against the might of the hegemony. Kane nodded thoughtfully. You know, Commander, you're absolutely right. We can't stand against the might of your hegemony. Not in a fair fight, anyway. Something in the way he said fair fight made my combat instincts twitch, but I pushed the feeling aside. The human was obviously trying to maintain some dignity in the face of inevitable defeat. Admirable, in its way. Then you accept our terms? I asked. Oh, I accept that you've given us 72 hours, Kane replied. Question is, do you accept that we might not need them? Before I could ask what he meant, the communication cut out. That's when things started getting weird. Our long-range sensors detected massive energy surges throughout the human system. Not weapons charging, we would have recognized that. This was something else entirely. Power sources going active all across their colonies, energy signatures we'd never seen before. Sir, my sensor technician reported, his voice puzzled. I'm reading. This can't be right. What is it, Lieutenant Zoresh? The humans appear to be powering up some kind of industrial infrastructure. Massive scale. But, sir, our intelligence reports indicated they barely had the resources to maintain their existing colonies. I moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings myself. The energy outputs were staggering. Not just on their homeworld, but on every single human colony. Synchronized, coordinated, as if they'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Could be a bluff, suggested my tactical officer, Commander Yex 12 Vana, making themselves look more dangerous than they are. With 47 ships against our 300. I laughed. What could they possibly be planning? That's when the first reports started coming in from our scout ships positioned throughout the galaxy. Human vessels, moving at impossible speeds, had appeared in systems we hadn't even told them we controlled. Not warships, but transport vessels, moving with a purpose that sent chills down my exoskeleton. Sir, Lieutenant Zoresh called out, his voice now openly concerned. I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions throughout hegemony space. Hundreds of them, all originating from human territories. How is that possible? I demanded. They barely have 12 operational faster than light vessels according to our intelligence. The lieutenant's skin had shifted to the pale blue of deep confusion. Sir, either our intelligence was catastrophically wrong, or the humans have been hiding their true capabilities on a scale that defies belief. Admiral Kane's face appeared on our communication screen without us initiating contact. He was smiling now, and that smile made my blood run cold. Commander Vorth-Nine-Kalar, he said pleasantly, I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I thought you might like a status report. What are you talking about, human? Well, you gave us 72 hours to evacuate our military personnel from the outer colonies. I'm happy to report that we've completed that task. I stared at him. Impossible. Our sensors would have detected mass evacuations. Kane's smile widened. Oh, we didn't evacuate them from the colonies, Commander. We evacuated them to your worlds. The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of the ship's systems seemed to quiet as the implications of his words sank in. You see, Kane continued conversationally, we've been expecting someone like you for quite some time. That's the thing about humans, Commander. We're excellent at learning from history, and history taught us that bullies like you always show up eventually. So we prepared. What have you done? I whispered. 23 years ago, we started the Deep Strike project. Every human colony, every ship, every military installation has been equipped with technology your scouts never detected because, frankly, you weren't looking for it. You see, we didn't just learn to split atoms, Commander. We learned to split space itself. The sensor displays around us lit up like festival decorations. Human strike forces had appeared simultaneously in 37 hegemony core systems, not the border worlds, not the outer colonies, the core systems. The ones that supplied our fleets, housed our command structures, contained our industrial might. Impossible, I breathed. The energy requirements alone. You're right, Kane agreed. It should be impossible. But you made a critical error in your intelligence gathering, Commander. You assumed we were fighting each other for resources because we were weak. You never considered that we might be fighting each other for practice. The tactical display showed human forces engaging hegemony installations across 1,000 light-years of space. Not ship-to-ship combat which they would lose. Something far more devastating. They were targeting infrastructure, supply lines, command centers, surgical strikes designed to cripple an empire. Every war we've fought, every conflict we've endured, taught us something new about asymmetric warfare, Kane explained, his voice now carrying the weight of absolute certainty. We learned that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And you, Commander, are very, very big. You cannot possibly maintain this offensive, I snarled, trying to regain some measure of control. Your logistics alone. Don't need logistics for a 10-minute war, Commander. 10 minutes. He'd said 10 minutes. That's when I realized the humans had never intended to fight us. They'd intended to destroy us, completely, utterly, in the span of time it would take me to make a cup of bitter tea. The first reports of successful strikes began flooding in. Hegemony Fleet Command, gone. The primary shipyards at Kesmore 7, obliterated. The Central Intelligence Archive, wiped from existence along with the entire moon it was built on. This is impossible, I said, but even as the words left my mouth I knew they weren't. The humans had done something that violated every principle of galactic warfare. They'd planned for a specific enemy they'd never met, prepared for a war they weren't sure would come, and when it finally arrived, they'd ended it before it truly began. Kane leaned forward on the screen. Commander, you gave us 72 hours to evacuate our military personnel from the outer colonies. We consider it done. Now, let me give you 72 seconds to order your fleet to surrender, or you'll discover just how creative humans can get when we're really motivated. I looked at the tactical display. In less than 8 minutes, the humans had effectively decapitated the galactic hegemony. 3,000 years of expansion, conquest and empire, reduced to chaos by a species that supposedly couldn't agree on what to call their homeworld. You're bluffing, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Kane checked something off screen. Commander, in about 30 seconds you're going to lose communication with Hegemony High Command. Not because we're jamming you, but because Hegemony High Command will cease to exist. After that, you'll be the ranking hegemony officer in this entire sector of space. He was right. The communication array went dark exactly when he said it would. How? I asked, feeling centuries of military training crumble around me. We told you, Commander. We've been preparing for you specifically. Every species you've conquered, we studied. Every tactic you've used, we analyzed. Every weakness in your empire, we catalogued. You want to know the really funny part? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I could. The really funny part is that you could have just asked nicely. We probably would have said yes to a trade partnership, maybe even a defensive alliance. But no, you had to come in here making demands, threatening our people, assuming we'd just roll over because you have bigger ships. The bridge was in complete chaos now. Reports flooding in from across Hegemony space. Entire battle fleets cut off from command, their officers frantically trying to understand what had happened to their empire. Supply convoys destroyed, industrial worlds burning, the entire infrastructure that supported galactic domination crumbling in real time. "What do you want?" I finally managed to ask. Kane's expression softened slightly. "What we've always wanted, Commander, is to be left alone, to grow, to explore, to build something better than what came before. The problem is, folks like you never seem to get that message unless it's delivered in terms you understand." "And what terms are those?" "Overwhelming, decisive, and absolute force applied with surgical precision," Kane replied. "In other words, we're speaking your language." The silence on my bridge stretched for what felt like an eternity. Every officer, every technician, every single member of my crew stared at their stations in stunned disbelief. The Galactic Hegemony, the most powerful military force in known space, had just been systematically dismantled by a species we'd categorized as minor threat level. "Commander," Lieutenant Zorash whispered, his voice barely audible, "I'm receiving surrender requests from 17 different Hegemony battle groups. They're asking for instructions." I almost laughed. Instructions? What instructions could I possibly give? Tell the mighty Hegemony fleet to hide behind the nearest asteroid and pray the humans don't notice them. Admiral Kane was still watching me from the communication screen, his expression patient but alert, like a predator that had already caught its prey, but was curious to see what it would do next. "You know what the truly terrifying part is, Commander," Kane said, as if reading my thoughts. "We're not even angry with you." "What?" I managed to croak. "Oh, don't get me wrong. We're not happy about the threats, the demands, the whole kneel before your new master's routine. But angry? No, see, we expected this. We've been expecting someone exactly like you for decades." Kane stood up from his command chair, and I could see the bridge of his flagship behind him. It wasn't what I'd expected from a primitive species. Clean lines, efficient design, and technology that my sensors were still struggling to categorize. "Let me tell you a little story, Commander," Kane continued, beginning to pace. "About 50 years ago, one of our deep space observation posts picked up signals from your empire. Took us a while to decrypt them, but when we did, we learned some very interesting things about Hegemony's standard operating procedures." My blood temperature dropped several degrees. "You've been monitoring our communications for 50 years. "Oh, longer than that, actually. We've been monitoring everyone's communications. See, that's another thing about humans that your intelligence reports probably missed. We're paranoid, magnificently. Productively paranoid. Every single one of our colonies has been listening to radio chatter across the galaxy since we figured out how to build the receivers." Kane gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical display on my bridge suddenly filled with data. Communication intercepts, military reports, strategic assessments, all bearing Hegemony classification codes, all dating back decades. We know about the Zephyrian Confederation and the Stellar Republic of Andak, the Crystalline Alliance, the Void Walkers. Should I go on? Because I can. We have records of every single species you've integrated into your empire over the past 2 centuries. "Impossible," I breathed, but even as I said it, I recognized some of those intercepts. Battle reports I'd filed myself during my younger years as a cruiser captain. "The thing is, Commander, we didn't just intercept your communications. We studied them. We analyzed your tactics, your strategies, your weaknesses. We built entire war colleges around the concept of fighting someone exactly like you." Kane paused his pacing and looked directly at me through the screen. "Tell me, Commander, in all your centuries of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that spent 23 years preparing specifically to fight you?" The answer was obvious. No. "Right. Because most species don't get the luxury of advance warning. They don't know you're coming until your fleets drop out of hyperspace in their home systems. But we knew. We've known about the Hegemony's expansion patterns since before most of our current military officers were born. Kane sat back down, his expression becoming almost conversational. So we prepared, not for a war, Commander, for this specific war, against this specific enemy, using these specific tactics. The Deep Strike project, I said, remembering his earlier words. Just the tip of the iceberg, I'm afraid. Would you like to know what else we've been working on for the past quarter century? I didn't answer, but Kane continued anyway. Project Mirror Shield. Every human colony, every ship, every installation has been equipped with cloaking technology that makes us invisible to hegemony sensors. Not stealth, Commander. Actual invisibility. Your scouts have been flying past inhabited human worlds for decades without knowing they were there. The implications hit me like a meteor strike. How many? Kane smiled. How many what? Colonies. Ships? Military installations? Take your best guess and multiply by about 50. 50. We'd estimated 30 human colonies. If Kane was telling the truth, there were 1,500. Minimum. Project Ghost Walk. Instantaneous transportation across galactic distances. No hyperspace signatures, no energy buildup, no warning. That's how we put strike teams inside your core systems without you detecting them. But the energy requirements, I protested weakly. Project Starforge. We've been harvesting energy directly from stellar cores for the past 18 years. Turns out, when you're not wasting resources on conquering your neighbors, you can accomplish some pretty impressive engineering projects. Kane leaned forward again, his blue eyes intense. But you want to know the real secret, Commander? The thing that made all of this possible? I waited, knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. Unity. Every human government, every military force, every colony and corporation and independent trader. We've all been working together on this project since day one. No politics, no territorial disputes, no resource conflicts, and just one species with one goal. Making sure that when someone like you showed up, we'd be ready. Impossible, I said again, though the word was losing all meaning. No species achieves that level of coordination, the logistics alone. You're thinking like a conqueror, Commander. The conquerors take what they need by force, which means everyone else fights to protect what they have. But when you're facing extinction, when you know that someone is coming to enslave or destroy your entire species, cooperation becomes a lot easier to achieve. Kane stood again and his expression hardened. So here's where we stand, Commander. In the past 10 minutes, your empire has lost approximately 70% of its military infrastructure, 90% of its command and control systems, and 100% of its ability to wage offensive war. The bridge displays confirmed his words. Damage reports continued flooding in from across hegemony space. Not casualties, I realized. Casualties implied survivors. What the humans had done was far more surgical and, in its way, more terrifying. Your fleets are intact, mostly, Kane continued. Your crews are alive. Your ships still function. But every single supply depot, every shipyard, every command center, every logistics hub that kept your empire running has been reduced to cosmic dust. What do you want? I asked for the second time, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Peace, Kane said simply. Real peace. Not the kind where you pretend to be reasonable while building up for another attack. Not the kind where you withdraw to lick your wounds and plan revenge. The kind where you go home, tell your people that the age of conquest is over, and start figuring out how to be good neighbors instead of galactic bullies. Kane's image flickered for a moment, and when it stabilized, he was holding a data pad. I'm transmitting the terms now, Commander. Read them carefully. The terms appeared on my personal display, and I scanned them with growing amazement. They were reasonable, more than reasonable. They were generous to the point of absurdity. The immediate cessation of all military operations against human territories and allied species. Complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces to your pre-expansion borders. Recognition of the independence and sovereignty of all previously conquered worlds that wish to leave your empire. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between humanity and any remaining hegemony worlds. I looked up from the display. That's it? You're not demanding tribute, reparations, revenge? Kane shrugged. What would be the point? We told you, Commander, we're not angry with you. We're just tired of waiting for bullies like you to learn how to behave. And if we refuse? Kane's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in those blue eyes. Then in another 10 minutes your fleets will start experiencing the same problems your infrastructure just had. We'd prefer not to do that, Commander, but we will if we have to. You would commit genocide? No, Kane replied firmly. But we would commit empire-cide, if that's a word. We'd dismantle every single ship, every single installation, every single piece of technology that allows you to project power beyond your own home systems. Your people would live, but the galactic hegemony would cease to exist. I stared at the terms again. The humans were offering to let us keep our dignity, our lives, even our core worlds. All we had to do was stop conquering other people. Why? I asked. Why are you being so merciful? Kane was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism, Commander. Because every species in this galaxy deserves the chance to grow, to learn, to become something better than what they were. Even yours. He paused, then added, besides, we've studied your history too. The hegemony wasn't always a conquering empire. 500 years ago, you were explorers, scientists, philosophers. You built beautiful cities and created art that moved other species to tears. You could be that again, if you chose to be. And if we can't change, if conquest is too deeply ingrained in our culture. Kane's smile was sad but determined. Then we'll be watching, Commander. We'll be watching and waiting, and if you ever decide to start this nonsense again, well, he gestured to the tactical displays showing the wreckage of our empire. You've seen what happens when humans have 23 years to prepare. Imagine what we could accomplish with 50. The communication link closed, leaving my bridge in stunned silence. Commander Yex-12 Vana finally spoke. Sir, what are your orders? I looked around at my crew, at the displays showing the systematic dismantling of everything we'd built over 3 millennia of expansion. The humans had given us a choice, evolution or extinction. Signal all hegemony vessels, I said quietly. Stand down. Prepare for withdrawal to core systems. Sir. The war is over, Commander. We lost. But perhaps I paused, thinking of Kane's words about what we used to be. Perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing. As my communications officer began transmitting the ceasefire orders, I couldn't help but wonder what the galaxy would look like now. The humans had proven that the age of conquest could end in 10 minutes if you had the will and the preparation to make it happen. Maybe it was time for all of us to learn a new way of being neighbors. The humans had given us 72 hours to evacuate. They'd needed 10 minutes to end our empire. But maybe, just maybe, they'd given us something more valuable than time. They'd given us a future.